Marcus Williams stopped abruptly on the icy sidewalk, his heart racing at the sight of the star-shaped birthmark. A 7-year-old blonde girl slept there, abandoned, unaware that she was about to change the life of the richest man in town. 5 years of desperate searching, millions spent on private investigators, sleepless nights. It had all led to this moment. He reached out a trembling hand toward the child, barely able to breathe, but no one could have imagined what would come next. Marcus Williams stopped abruptly on the icy sidewalk, his heart racing at the sight of the star-shaped birthmark. A 7-year-old blonde girl slept there, abandoned, unaware that she was about to change the life of the richest man in town. 5 years of desperate searching, millions spent on private investigators, sleepless nights. It had all led to this moment. He reached out a trembling hand toward the child, barely able to breathe. But no one could have imagined what would come next. The December wind cut through downtown Seattle like a knife, but Marcus Williams barely felt it. At 62, the tech mogul had grown numb to most things: cold, warmth, even the billions sitting in his accounts. Nothing mattered since that horrible day 5 years ago when his world shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. Emma, he whispered into the empty street, her name still a prayer on his lips after all this time. His little girl had been just 2 years old when she vanished from their backyard during a family barbecue. One moment she was giggling on her pink tricycle, the next, gone. The FBI searched for months. Private investigators burned through millions of his dollars, but Emma Williams had simply disappeared, as if the earth had swallowed her whole. The police eventually declared her dead. Marcus never accepted it. Tonight, like so many others, he wandered the streets where hope goes to die. The homeless camps, the dark alleys, anywhere a desperate father might find what the authorities couldn't. His Italian leather shoes splashed through puddles that reflected the neon signs of late-night diners and pawn shops. That's when he saw her. Curled up against the brick wall of an abandoned storefront, a small figure shivered beneath a torn newspaper. Blonde hair peeked out from under a dirty baseball cap. Marcus had seen hundreds of homeless children in his midnight searches, but something made him stop. Something made his heart hammer against his ribs. The child stirred, and her right arm shifted from beneath the makeshift blanket. Marcus Williams, billionaire CEO who commanded boardrooms and moved markets, fell to his knees on the cold concrete. There, on the little girl's arm, was a birthmark shaped exactly like a 5-pointed star, the same birthmark his Emma had been born with. "Oh my God," he breathed, his hands shaking as he reached toward the sleeping child. "Emma, baby, is that you?" The girl's eyes fluttered open, the same brilliant blue eyes that haunted his dreams every single night. She looked up at this strange man with fear and confusion, but Marcus saw something else flicker across her face. Recognition. Without hesitation, Marcus scooped the frail child into his arms, feeling how light she was, how cold. She didn't resist, didn't scream. She just stared at him with those unforgettable eyes as he ran toward his Bentley parked at the curb. "We're going to the hospital, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Everything's going to be okay now." As Marcus raced through the empty streets toward Seattle General, the little girl in his arms whispered something that stopped his heart. "Daddy?" But when he looked down at her face, her eyes had gone blank again, as if that moment of recognition had never happened at all. Marcus pressed harder on the accelerator, knowing that in the next few hours, a simple DNA test would either resurrect his greatest joy or destroy what remained of his shattered soul. What he didn't know was that the truth waiting for him would be far more complex and dangerous than he could ever imagine. Dr. Patricia Chen had delivered difficult news before, but nothing quite like this. She held the DNA results with trembling hands as Marcus Williams paced the hospital corridor like a caged lion, his expensive suit wrinkled from hours of anxious waiting. The little girl, cleaned up now and sleeping peacefully in the pediatric ward, had been fed, examined and treated for severe malnutrition and dehydration. "Mr. Williams," Dr. Chen began carefully, studying his haggard face, "the results are conclusive. This child is genetically your daughter Emma. There's absolutely no doubt." Marcus collapsed into the nearest chair, 5 years of grief, guilt and desperate hope crashing over him like a tsunami. His hands covered his face as sobs racked his powerful frame. "She's alive. My baby girl is alive. All this time she's been alive." "There's more we need to discuss, Doctor." Chen continued gently, pulling up a chair beside him. "Emma shows signs of severe psychological conditioning. She's been trained to suppress memories, to follow specific commands without question, to distrust authority figures. Her responses to our questions are rehearsed, almost mechanical. Whatever happened to her, it was systematic and deliberate. This wasn't random abuse, this was professional." Dr. Chen paused, watching Marcus process this information. "We've also found evidence of old injuries. Healed fractures, scars from cigarette burns. Someone has been using pain as a training tool. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, but your daughter has been through hell." When Marcus finally entered Emma's room, she watched him with the wary eyes of a hunted animal. Gone was that flicker of recognition from the street. She pressed herself against the far corner of the hospital bed, her small frame trembling despite the warm blankets surrounding her. "I know you're scared, sweetheart," Marcus whispered, sitting far enough away to not frighten her. His voice was thick with emotion as he took in every detail of her face, thinner now, marked by hardship, but still unmistakably his Emma. "But I'm your daddy. I've been looking for you every single day since you disappeared. I never stopped believing you were out there." Emma's small voice was barely audible, practiced in its emptiness. "The man said my daddy didn't want me anymore. He said I was bad, that I had to work to eat, that nobody would ever love a dirty street rat like me." Marcus felt his heart shatter all over again. Someone had stolen not just his daughter, but her memories of being loved, her understanding of her own worth. The DNA proved she was his Emma, but the little girl staring at him was a stranger, trained to survive on the streets through fear and pain. "That man lied to you, baby," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. "I never stopped wanting you. I never stopped loving you. Your room is exactly the same as when you left it. Your toys, your books, everything. I was waiting for you to come home." But as Emma flinched away from his outstretched hand, Marcus realized that bringing his daughter home would be the easiest part of this nightmare. The real battle would be helping her remember how to be loved. 3 weeks passed in Marcus's Bellevue mansion, and Emma remained a ghost haunting the halls. The 30,000-square-foot estate felt hollow despite its grandeur. She ate mechanically at the far end of the dining room table, spoke only when spoken to, and flinched whenever anyone moved too quickly. The trauma therapist Dr. Sarah Martinez visited daily, but progress was painfully slow. She's been conditioned to distrust adults, especially parental figures, Dr. Scene. Martinez explained to Marcus during one of their evening sessions. Whoever had her broke down her natural bonds systematically. They used a combination of isolation, controlled affection, and punishment to reshape her understanding of relationships. It's going to take months, maybe years, to rebuild that trust. Marcus stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his study, watching Emma sit alone in the perfectly manicured garden. She was surrounded by every luxury money could buy. A playground designed by the world's top child psychologists, organic meals prepared by a French chef, clothes from the finest children's boutiques. But she moved through it all like a prisoner. "She won't even let the housekeeper touch her," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "Yesterday, Mrs. Jen tried to brush her hair, and Emma had a complete breakdown. She kept saying, "I'll be good, I'll be good," over and over. The swing set he'd had installed was identical to the one she'd loved as a 2-year-old, hand-carved from sustainable teak and painted in her favorite colors, but now it might as well have been from another planet. "Emma," he called gently, approaching with a picture book, "would you like me to read to you?" She shook her head, but didn't run away. Progress, Dr. Martinez would say. Her blonde hair, now clean and cut by Seattle's most expensive children's stylist, caught the afternoon sunlight. "This was your favorite book," Marcus continued, sitting on the grass nearby. "The Little Engine That Could. You used to make me read it 5 times every night. You'd curl up in my lap and recite along with every word." For just a moment, something flickered in Emma's eyes. Her head tilted slightly, like a bird hearing a familiar song from long ago. "I think I can. I think I can," Marcus recited softly, opening to the familiar pages. Emma's lips moved silently, as if the words were trying to escape from some locked room in her mind. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I think I can. I think I can." Tidun, Marcus's heart leaped, but he forced himself to remain calm. "That's right, sweetheart. Do you remember anything else about this book?" Emma's brow furrowed with concentration, her small hands twisting the fabric of her designer dress. A lady with yellow hair used to sing it to me. She made it into a song before the dark time came." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Emma's mother had been a brunette. Yellow hair, blonde hair. Someone else had been reading to his daughter, someone who'd cared enough to turn a simple story into a song. "This lady," Marcus pressed gently, "do you remember her name?" Emma's eyes darted around nervously, as if she was checking for eavesdroppers. "I'm not supposed to talk about her. The bad man said terrible things would happen if I talked about her." But who, and why had they given her up to live on the streets? As Emma retreated back into silence, Marcus realized the mystery of his daughter's disappearance was far more complex than a simple kidnapping. Someone had loved her, cared for her, protected her, and then someone else had torn her away from that safety and thrown her into hell. Detective Ray Thompson hadn't expected to hear from Marcus Williams again. The billionaire's daughter had been declared dead 3 years ago after the investigation went cold, another case file gathering dust in the basement of Seattle PD. Now Thompson sat in Williams's leather-appointed study, staring at a very much alive Emma through the window as she played cautiously in the garden with a small stuffed elephant. "I need to know everything," Marcus said, his voice steel wrapped in silk. He'd lost weight in the past few weeks, the stress of Emma's condition taking its toll. Who took her, where she's been, and why she was living on the streets like a feral animal. Thompson opened the thick case file, pages yellowed with age. The original investigation focused on ransom, but no demands ever came. We traced every lead, interviewed hundreds of people. Your security cameras showed nothing. The FBI brought in their best profilers. It was like she vanished into thin air. "But she didn't vanish," Marcus said sharply. "Someone took her. Someone kept her alive for 5 years. Someone trained her to beg on the streets." "What about the homeless camps, the area where I found her?" Thompson's expression grew grim. "That's controlled by the Castellano network. They've run most of the illegal operations in that district for over a decade. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. Kids like Emma are often used as runners, beggars, or worse. They're invisible to most people, perfect for criminal operations." Marcus's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists. "Are you telling me my daughter spent 5 years as a slave to these animals?" "It's likely. But here's what doesn't add up," Thompson continued, flipping through crime scene photos and witness statements. "The Castellanos don't usually keep kids that long. They age out of the system around 10 or 11. After that, they're either moved into other operations or—" Thompson paused delicately. "Or what?" "Disposed of. The fact that she was still alive, still being used for street begging at 7 years old, suggests someone was protecting her. Someone in the organization had a reason to keep your daughter safe." Marcus stood and walked to his wall, safe, entering a complex code with steady fingers. He removed a thick envelope and placed it on the desk. "I'm offering $5 million to anyone who can tell me who took my daughter and why. No questions asked. Complete anonymity guaranteed." Thompson whistled low. "That kind of money will bring out every informant, criminal, and con artist in the city. Are you sure you're ready for what we might find? Some stones are better left unturned." Marcus looked out at Emma, who was now tentatively touching the swing, her small hand barely making it rock. "Detective, I've spent 5 years in hell, watching my marriage crumble, my business suffer, my soul die piece by piece. I'm ready for anything that brings me closer to the truth about what happened to my daughter." What neither man knew was that the truth was already much closer than they imagined, and it would destroy everything Marcus thought he knew about that terrible day when his world ended. Dr. Martinez's breakthrough came during what seemed like an ordinary session. Emma was drawing, something she'd started doing recently with expensive art supplies Marcus had bought, when she suddenly stopped and stared at her own artwork. The drawing showed a house with a woman and a dog in the yard. "The yellow-haired lady had a dog," Emma said quietly, her voice cutting through the silence of the therapy room like a blade. Marcus, watching from behind the one-way mirror, leaned forward intently, his hands pressed against the glass as if he could somehow reach through to his daughter. "Tell me about the dog, Emma, Doctor." Martinez encouraged, her voice carefully modulated to avoid triggering Emma's defensive responses. "Brown and white. Medium size. Named." Emma's face scrunched with concentration, her small hands gripping the crayon tighter. "Named Coco. The dog was named Coco, and he would lick my face in the mornings. The lady called me Little Star because of my birthmark." Marcus felt his knees go weak. Only one person in his life had ever called Emma Little Star: his sister-in-law, Grace. Grace, who had been at the barbecue that day. Grace, who had a brown and white spaniel named Coco. Grace, who had blonde hair and had helped search for Emma for months after the disappearance. "This lady," Dr. Martinez continued carefully, "do you remember what she looked like? How she made you feel?" Emma nodded slowly, her drawing becoming more detailed. "Pretty. She had soft hands. She cried a lot, especially at night when she thought I was sleeping. She would hold me and say she was sorry, that she didn't want to give me away, but the bad man said he would hurt her too if she didn't obey." Emma's voice grew smaller, more frightened. "She taught me songs and read me stories. She made me feel safe for a while. But she was always scared, always looking over her shoulder." Marcus burst through the door, unable to contain himself any longer. "Emma, sweetheart, this lady, did she ever tell you her name?" Emma looked up at him with those devastating blue eyes, eyes that held too much knowledge for a 7-year-old. "She said to call her Mama Grace. But she said she wasn't my real mama. She said my real daddy loved me very much and was looking for me every day." The room spun around Marcus. Grace Patterson, his deceased wife's sister, Emma's beloved aunt who used to babysit her every weekend. The woman who'd been at the barbecue that day, who'd been in the backyard when Emma disappeared. The woman who'd helped organize search parties, who'd held him while he cried, who'd sworn she'd never stop looking. Grace had been the one with blonde hair. Grace had been the one with the brown and white spaniel named Coco. Grace had been the one calling Emma Little Star. "Where is Mama Grace now?" "Doctor," Martinez asked gently, sensing the monumental importance of this revelation. Emma's eyes filled with tears, her small body beginning to shake. The bad man took me away from her. He was so angry. He said she was supposed to give me up sooner, that she'd broken the rules. He said if I ever told anyone about her, he would kill her and make me watch. He said if I ever told anyone about anything, bad things would happen to everyone I loved. Marcus sank into a chair, his world tilting on its axis. His sister-in-law, the woman he'd trusted with his grief, the woman who'd mourned with him, had had his daughter all along, but if Grace had her, why had Emma ended up on the streets? And who was this bad man who'd torn them apart? As Emma continued drawing, adding details to the house and the woman and the dog, Marcus realized he was about to uncover a betrayal that would make losing Emma the first time seem like a mercy. Marcus stood outside Grace Patterson's modest Seattle apartment at midnight, his hands shaking as he raised his fist to knock. Detective Thompson waited in an unmarked car below, ready to make an arrest if necessary. 5 years of grief, guilt, and sleepless nights had led to this moment of reckoning. The apartment building was in a run-down part of Capitol Hill, a far cry from the suburban home Grace had shared with her ex-husband. Paint peeled from the walls, and the hallway smelled of cigarettes and desperation. Grace opened the door in her bathrobe, her blonde hair disheveled from sleep. When she saw Marcus standing there in the harsh fluorescent light, every drop of color drained from her face. She looked older, thinner, haunted. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Oh, God, Marcus, I can explain." "Can you?" His voice was deadly quiet, controlled fury barely contained beneath the surface. "Can you explain why my daughter has been calling you Mama Grace? Can you explain why she's been living on the streets while I've been dying inside thinking she was dead?" Grace stepped back, tears already streaming down her face. Her hands trembled as she gestured for him to enter. "Please, come in. Please let me tell you everything. I've been praying for this day and dreading it for 5 years." Marcus entered the small, cramped apartment and immediately saw them. Dozens of photographs of Emma covering every surface. Emma as a toddler learning to walk. Emma as a preschooler playing with Coco. Emma learning to read, laughing at cartoons, sleeping peacefully in a small bed. 5 years of his daughter's life that he'd missed, documented in heartbreaking detail. "I saved her," Grace sobbed, collapsing onto her worn couch. "Marcus, you have to understand. I saved her life that day. I had no choice." "From what? From me? I'm her father. I loved her more than my own life." "These, not from you," Grace cried, her voice breaking. "From James, from my husband, from the monsters he owed money to." Marcus felt the floor disappear beneath him. James Patterson, Grace's ex-husband, a man with known connections to organized crime. A man who'd been at the barbecue that day, who'd offered to help with the search, who'd mysteriously disappeared right after Emma's kidnapping. James was in debt to the Castellanos for over $2 million, Grace continued, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. Gambling, bad investments, cocaine. They told him to pay up immediately, or they'd take someone he loved as collateral. But James told them to take Emma instead. He said she was worth more than money to you, that you'd pay anything to get her back. Marcus's vision went red with rage. He sold my daughter to pay his gambling debts? I found out the morning it happened. James was drunk, bragging about his clever solution. I was supposed to distract you at the barbecue while he took her from the backyard. But I couldn't do it, Marcus. I couldn't let those animals have her, so I took her first. You've had her for 5 years and never told me she was alive. Marcus's voice rose to a roar. Grace flinched as if he'd struck her. James said if I ever contacted you, if I ever brought her back, the Castellanos would kill all of us. You, me, Emma, everyone. He said they'd make examples of us, that they'd torture us slowly to send a message. I was terrified, but I thought I could keep her safe until I figured out how to bring her home safely. Marcus felt his world restructuring itself around this impossible truth. Everything he'd believed about that day, about the investigation, about his own guilt, was crumbling. Then why was she on the streets? Why wasn't she with you? Grace's sob was primal, animal-like, torn from the depths of her soul. Because 3 months ago, James found us. I'd been so careful, moved us 6 times, changed our names, paid cash for everything. But he found us anyway. And this time, he didn't just threaten, he took her while I was at work. Left me a note saying the debt was finally being paid. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. His brother-in-law had sold his daughter to criminals. His sister-in-law had hidden her for years in a misguided attempt to protect her, and now the same man who'd started this nightmare had delivered Emma into the hands of the very monsters he'd owed money to. But as Grace continued to cry, rocking back and forth on her couch, surrounded by photos of the daughter she'd loved and lost, Marcus realized the most terrifying question of all. If James had taken Emma 3 months ago to finally settle his debt with the Castellanos, why was she still alive when he found her on the streets? 3 days after the confrontation with Grace, Marcus received a call that changed everything. Detective Thompson's voice was tight with urgency as he spoke from his car phone. "We found James Patterson," Thompson said. "You're not going to like this, Marcus. He's in Seattle General Hospital, barely alive. Someone worked him over with a baseball bat 2 nights ago." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Is he conscious? Can he talk?" "Conscious, yes. Talking. Barely. But here's the thing. Whoever did this wasn't trying to kill him. They were sending a message. The doctors say his injuries were precisely calculated to cause maximum pain while keeping him alive." 20 minutes later, Marcus stood outside James Patterson's hospital room, staring at the man who had destroyed his life. James looked like a broken scarecrow, face swollen beyond recognition, both arms in casts, breathing through a tube. But his eyes were alert, and when he saw Marcus, they filled with terror. "Please," James wheezed through his damaged throat, "don't let them finish the job. I'll tell you everything." Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed, his hands clenched into fists. "Start talking. Why is my daughter still alive?" James's voice was barely a whisper. "I never gave her to the Castellanos. I was supposed to, but I couldn't go through with it, not after seeing what they do to kids." "Then who has been running her on the streets?" "The Volkovs. Russian mob. They bought her from me 3 months ago when the Castellanos demanded their money. I thought they'd be gentler, use her for pickpocketing, small stuff." James started crying, tears mixing with the blood on his face. "I didn't know they'd break her like that. I swear I didn't know." Marcus leaned closer, his voice deadly quiet. "Who beat you up, James? Who's sending the message?" James's eyes darted around the room frantically. "Someone's been protecting Emma all along, someone with serious power. They found out about the sale to the Volkovs and went ballistic. They nearly killed me for breaking some kind of deal." "What deal?" "I don't know. All I know is that when I took Emma from Grace, I got a call within hours. A woman's voice, ice cold. She said Emma was under protection, that I'd signed my death warrant by moving her. She gave me 48 hours to undo what I'd done." Marcus felt the room spinning. "A woman? What woman?" "I don't know," James sobbed. "But she knew everything. Where I was, where Emma was, even what I'd had for breakfast. She said if Emma was harmed, she'd make me beg for death. And Marcus, I think she's still watching. I think she's been watching all of us for 5 years." As Marcus left the hospital, his mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Someone with immense power and resources had been protecting Emma from the shadows. Someone who knew about the kidnapping, about Grace, about everything. But who? And why hadn't they simply returned Emma to him? The answer, he realized with growing dread, might be more devastating than anything he'd already discovered. The Volkov safe house sat in an industrial district south of Seattle, surrounded by abandoned warehouses and rusted shipping containers. Marcus crouched behind a concrete barrier with Detective Thompson and 6 SWAT officers, watching through night vision binoculars as armed men patrolled the perimeter. "We've been tracking their operations for months," Thompson whispered. "Human trafficking, primarily children. If Emma was here, she wasn't alone." Marcus adjusted his bulletproof vest, feeling the weight of the .45 caliber pistol Thompson had insisted he carry. "How many kids?" "Intel suggests at least a dozen, maybe more. Ages 5 to 12. They use them for everything: begging, pickpocketing, drug running, worse." Thompson's jaw tightened. "These aren't people, Marcus. They're monsters." The raid began at exactly 3:47 a.m. SWAT breached the front entrance while secondary teams hit the back and sides simultaneously. Marcus followed Thompson through the smoke and chaos, his heart hammering as they searched room after room. What they found made Marcus's stomach turn. Mattresses on concrete floors, chains bolted to walls, children's clothes scattered like discarded toys. The smell of fear and desperation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. "Jesus Christ," Thompson breathed, shining his flashlight on a wall covered with photographs. Dozens of missing children stared back at them, including a recent photo of Emma looking terrified and hollow-eyed. They found Viktor Volkov in the basement office, frantically shredding documents. He was a massive man, with gold teeth and tattoos covering his neck, but when he saw the guns pointed at him, he raised his hands without resistance. "Where are the children?" Thompson demanded. Volkov smiled coldly. "What children? I run legitimate business, import-export." Marcus stepped forward, his gun trained on Volkov's chest. "My daughter was here. Emma Williams, 7 years old, blonde hair, star-shaped birthmark." Something flickered in Volkov's eyes. Not recognition, but fear. "Ah, the protected one. You are the billionaire father, yes?" "What do you mean, protected?" Volkov laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Your daughter, she bring us nothing but trouble. 3 days after we acquire her, we get visit from very scary lady. She make us offer we cannot refuse." Thompson leaned forward. "What kind of offer?" "She pay us 5 times what we paid for girl, but we must release all children, shut down operation, leave Seattle forever. She also make very clear what happen if we refuse." Volkov touched a fresh scar across his throat. "We take the money." Marcus felt his world shifting again. Who was this woman? She give no name. Very beautiful, very dangerous. Expensive clothes, expensive car. She know things about us that no one should know. Our bank accounts, our families in Russia, our business in other cities. She say Emma Williams is under her personal protection, has been for years. "Where did you take Emma after you released her?" Volkov shrugged. "We not take her anywhere. The lady, she take Emma herself. Last I see, Emma get in back of black Mercedes with this woman. That was 2 weeks ago." Marcus stared at Volkov in shock. Emma hadn't been rescued by accident. Someone had specifically come for her, someone who'd been watching and waiting, someone who'd let her live on the streets just long enough to send a message to anyone else who might harm her. As they left the safe house with Volkov in custody, Marcus realized the mysterious woman wasn't just protecting Emma. She was using her as bait to eliminate threats, and that meant Emma's appearance on the street that night hadn't been random at all. It had been orchestrated. The break came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chen, Marcus's longtime housekeeper, approached him in his study 3 days after the Volkov raid. Her weathered hands trembled as she held an envelope. "Mr. Williams," she said in her accented English, "I must tell you something I should have said years ago." Marcus looked up from the financial reports he'd been ignoring. "What is it, Mrs. Chen?" "The day Miss Emma disappeared, there was a woman here. She came to the back gate while the party was happening. Very elegant lady, driving expensive car. She asked many questions about Emma, what time she nap, where she play, who watch her." Marcus felt ice form in his veins. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Mrs." Chen's eyes filled with tears. "She give me $5,000, say it was to help with my sick grandson in China. She say she was private investigator working for insurance company, checking on family security. I think nothing of it at the time." She handed Marcus the envelope. "But yesterday I see this woman again. She come to the house while you were at hospital visiting the man James. She give me this letter, say to give it to you when the time was right." Marcus tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery, with a Seattle address written in elegant script, along with a single line: "It's time we met. Come alone. E.M." The address was in Bellevue, in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. Marcus drove there in his Tesla, his mind racing with possibilities. E.M., the same initials as his daughter. Coincidence? The house was a stunning modern masterpiece worth at least $20 million, all glass and steel, perched on a cliff overlooking Lake Washington. Marcus pressed the intercom button at the gate with trembling fingers. "I've been waiting for you, Marcus," came a woman's voice, cultured and confident. The gate swung open silently. Marcus drove up the winding driveway, past perfectly manicured gardens and sculptures that probably cost more than most people's homes. When he reached the front door, it opened before he could knock. The woman standing there took his breath away. She was perhaps 45, stunningly beautiful, with silver-streaked dark hair and piercing green eyes. She wore a perfectly tailored black suit that screamed wealth and power, but it was her smile that made Marcus's heart stop. It was Emma's smile, mature and refined, but unmistakably familiar. "Hello, Marcus," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Elena Montgomery. I believe we have a great deal to discuss about our daughter." Marcus stared at her in shock. "Our daughter." The words hit him like a physical blow. "I think there's been some mistake," he managed to say. Elena's smile never wavered. "No mistake, Marcus. I'm Emma's biological mother. The woman you married, Sarah, was my younger sister. She stole my identity, my life, and my chance to raise Emma. When she died in that car accident 3 years ago, I thought it was finally time to reclaim what was mine." Marcus felt the world spinning around him. Sarah had never mentioned having a sister. Their marriage certificate, Emma's birth certificate, everything had been in Sarah's name. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "Is it?" Elena stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. "Come in, Marcus. Let me show you what 5 years of planning looks like. Let me show you how I've been protecting our daughter while positioning myself to take her back." As Marcus stepped into the marble foyer, he realized that every single thing he'd believed about his life had been a carefully constructed lie. And the woman responsible was standing right next to him, holding all the cards. Elena's living room was a study in controlled elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic lake views, museum-quality art, furniture that whispered rather than shouted its expense. But what dominated the space was a wall covered with photographs and documents that chronicled 5 years of meticulous surveillance. Marcus stared in horror at pictures of himself leaving the office, entering restaurants, visiting Emma's old school, images of Grace with Emma at various safe houses, photos of James Patterson meeting with criminals, Detective Thompson reviewing case files. Every moment of his grief had been watched, documented, analyzed. "You've been stalking us," Marcus breathed. "Protecting," Elena corrected, pouring herself a glass of wine from a crystal decanter. "Would you like a drink? You look like you need one." Marcus ignored the offer. "Explain this to me. All of it. Starting with who you really are." Elena settled into a leather chair with feline grace. "My name is Elena Montgomery, though I've used many others over the years. Sarah Williams was my younger sister, born Sarah Montgomery. When we were teenagers, our parents died in a house fire. Sarah inherited everything, the insurance money, the family trust, our parents' estate. I was in Europe at university and couldn't return in time to contest the will. She gestured to a framed photograph on the side table. Two young women who looked remarkably similar, both beautiful, but Eleanor clearly the more sophisticated of the two. Sarah was always jealous of me. I was older, more successful, more ambitious. When I started my tech company and became successful, she couldn't stand it. So she stole my identity, social security number, birth certificate, everything. By the time I realized what she'd done, she'd already moved to Seattle, married you, and gotten pregnant with Emma. Marcus felt sick. That's why there were no relatives at our wedding. No family photos in the house. Sarah said her family was dead. Technically true. I was dead to her the moment she decided to steal my life. Elena's voice turned cold. I spent years fighting her in court, but she'd covered her tracks well, had fake documents, false witnesses, everything. The law believed she was the real Sarah Montgomery. So you kidnapped Emma for revenge? Elena's laugh was bitter. Revenge? Marcus, I didn't kidnap Emma. I saved her from being kidnapped. When I learned about James Patterson's plan to sell her to the Castellanos, I intervened. Marcus stared at her in confusion, but Grace said, Grace told you the truth as far as she knew it. She did take Emma first, trying to save her, but she had no resources, no protection, no long-term plan. She was hiding in cheap motels with a terrified child, one step ahead of both James and his criminal contacts. Elena stood and walked to the window, her silhouette striking against the darkening sky. I found them after 6 months. Emma was traumatized, malnourished, living in constant fear. Grace was having panic attacks, jumping at every shadow. They couldn't go on like that. So you took Emma from Grace too? I made Grace an offer. I would protect Emma, give her a stable home, ensure her safety, and provide Grace with enough money to disappear completely. In exchange, Grace would trust me to return Emma to you when the time was right. Marcus felt his legs give out. He collapsed into the nearest chair. When the time was right. Emma has been living with you for 4.5 years. Elena nodded. In this house, with the best tutors, therapists, security money can buy. She goes by the name Emma Montgomery here. She's healthy, happy, brilliant. She speaks 3 languages, plays piano, loves to paint. She has no memory of the trauma with Grace because I had those memories professionally suppressed by the world's leading experts. Then why was she on the streets? Why did I find her begging and terrified? Elena's expression hardened. Because 3 months ago everything went wrong. James Patterson discovered where we were. I still don't know how. He broke into the house while I was in New York on business, took Emma while she was sleeping. By the time I realized what had happened, he'd already sold her to the Volkovs. Elena turned back to Marcus, her green eyes blazing with fury. I had invested 5 years in protecting her, nurturing her, preparing her to return to you as a whole, healthy child. James destroyed all of that in one night of greed and stupidity. But you got her back from the Volkovs. Volkov told me you paid them to release her. I did. But the damage was done. 3 weeks in that hellhole undid years of therapy. Emma reverted to a traumatized state. Her suppressed memories came flooding back in fragments. She couldn't remember me, couldn't remember this house, couldn't remember feeling safe. Eleanor's voice broke slightly. I had 2 choices. Take her back and try to undo the damage, or orchestrate her rescue by you and let nature take its course. I chose you, Marcus. Even though it killed me, I chose to let her go back to her father. Marcus stared at this woman who claimed to be Emma's biological mother, who had orchestrated his daughter's disappearance and return, who had puppet-mastered his entire life for 5 years. Prove it, he said quietly. Prove you're her real mother. Elena smiled sadly and pulled out her phone. She showed him a video of Emma, healthy, laughing, playing piano in this very room. The timestamp showed it was taken just 4 months ago. DNA tests are in that folder on the table, Eleanor said, along with hospital records from Emma's birth, proof of Sarah's identity theft, everything you need to verify my story. Marcus reached for the folder with trembling hands, knowing that whatever he found inside would change everything forever. But as he opened it, one question burned in his mind. If Elena loved Emma so much, why was she giving her up now? The answer, he suspected, would be the most devastating revelation yet. The DNA results were irrefutable. Elena Montgomery was indeed Emma's biological mother, and the woman Marcus had married was her identity-stealing sister. But what shattered Marcus even more were the medical records detailing the false Sarah's, struggle with severe mental illness, documented suicide attempts, and a history of violence that Elena's lawyers had meticulously compiled. "She was dangerous, Marcus," Eleanor said softly, watching him process the information. "The real Sarah Montgomery died when she was 19, drove her car off a bridge after a psychotic episode. My sister stole her identity from the morgue records and rebuilt herself as a stable, loving woman. But the mental illness was always there, lurking beneath the surface." Marcus remembered the final years of his marriage, Sarah's increasing paranoia, her violent mood swings, her obsession with Emma's safety that bordered on imprisonment. He'd attributed it to grief over her family's deaths, stress from his business demands. Now he understood it was something far more sinister. "Emma was never safe with her," Elena continued. "That's why I had to act when I did. Sarah was planning to take Emma and disappear completely. She'd already withdrawn money from your accounts, had fake passports made. She was going to vanish with your daughter, and you'd never see either of them again. So you arranged the kidnapping." "I arranged an intervention. James Patterson owed me money, substantial money, from a failed business venture. I told him I'd forgive his debts if he helped me save Emma from an unstable mother. The plan was for Grace to take Emma temporarily while I dealt with Sarah through legal channels." Elena's voice grew pained. "But James got greedy. Instead of bringing Emma to me as arranged, he saw an opportunity to solve all his problems by selling her to the highest bidder. Grace, bless her heart, saved Emma from that fate, but she had no idea she was disrupting a carefully planned rescue operation." Marcus stood and walked to the wall of surveillance photos. 5 years, Elena. You watched me grieve for 5 years. You let me think my daughter was dead. I let you think she was missing, Eleanor corrected, and every day of those 5 years I was preparing her to return to you as the healthy, stable child she deserved to be. I was undoing the psychological damage Sarah had inflicted, giving Emma the childhood she'd been denied. "By denying me mine," Marcus said bitterly. Elena flinched as if slapped. "Do you think this was easy for me? Do you think I enjoyed watching you suffer? I fell in love with that little girl, Marcus. She became my daughter in every way that mattered. Giving her back to you is the hardest thing I've ever done." "Then why are you doing it?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the lake. "Because a month ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I have perhaps 6 months to live, possibly less." Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. "I could fight this in court," Elena continued. "I could use my resources to keep Emma, let her watch me die slowly, traumatize her all over again. Or I can do what's best for her, return her to her father, the man she was meant to be with." She turned to face him, tears streaming down her perfectly composed face. "But I need something from you, Marcus. I need to know that you understand what Emma has been through, what she needs, what she's capable of becoming. She's not the traumatized 2-year-old who disappeared. She's a brilliant, sensitive, incredibly gifted child who has survived things no child should have to survive." Elena walked to her desk and pulled out a thick leather portfolio. "These are her school records, her therapy sessions, her artwork, her compositions. She's reading at a high school level, speaks fluent French and Italian, has a photographic memory for music. She's also been taught self-defense, strategic thinking, and how to read people's intentions. You turned her into a miniature version of yourself. I gave her the tools she'll need to survive in a world that has already tried to destroy her twice, Eleanor said firmly. And now I'm giving her back to you, because despite everything that's happened, I believe you're the father she needs. Eleanor opened the portfolio and showed Marcus dozens of drawings Emma had made over the years. They were sophisticated beyond her age. Portraits of Elena, landscapes of the lake, abstract representations of emotions. But what caught Marcus's attention were the recent drawings, all done in the past month. They were pictures of him. Emma had drawn Marcus from memory, sitting in his office, walking in the garden, reading in his study. In every picture he looked sad, lonely, searching. She remembers you, Elena said quietly. Even after everything that's happened, even with the suppressed memories and the trauma, she remembers her daddy. She's been asking about you constantly since the incident with the Volkovs. Marcus felt his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. She wants to come home? She wants to come home, Elena confirmed. But Marcus, I need you to promise me something. Don't try to erase these 5 years. Don't pretend they didn't happen. Emma needs to know that she was loved during her time away, that she wasn't abandoned, that she survived because she's strong and smart and capable. Elena pulled out one final document. I've established a trust fund for Emma, $50 million, that she'll inherit when she turns 18. It's managed by the most reputable firm in Seattle, completely separate from my other assets. She'll never want for anything. I don't want your money. It's not my money, Marcus. It's Emma's birthright. It's the inheritance she should have received from our parents, the inheritance my sister stole. Elena smiled sadly. And it's my way of ensuring that even after I'm gone, I can still protect her. As Marcus prepared to leave, portfolio in hand, Elena called out to him one last time. Marcus! Emma doesn't know about the cancer. When the time comes, when I'm gone, please tell her that I loved her enough to let her go. Tell her that every day I had with her was a gift. Marcus nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. As he walked to his car, he realized that tomorrow he would finally bring his daughter home, not the broken, traumatized child he'd rescued from the streets, but the remarkable young woman she'd become. But first, he had to prepare himself for the most important conversation of his life. Marcus stood at the entrance of Elena's mansion the next morning, his heart hammering against his ribs as he prepared for the most important moment of his life. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see Emma sitting at a white grand piano, her small fingers dancing across the keys with the skill of a concert pianist. The melody she played was hauntingly beautiful, a composition she'd written herself, according to Elena's notes. This wasn't the broken, terrified child he'd found on the streets. This was the daughter Elena had raised, confident, talented, radiant with health and intelligence. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled. She wore a beautiful blue dress that matched her eyes, and when she played, her face lit up with pure joy. Elena appeared beside him, looking frailer than she had the day before. The cancer was moving fast, stealing her strength even as she tried to maintain her composed exterior. She's been practicing that piece for weeks, Elena said softly. She wanted it to be perfect for you. She knows I'm coming. She knows her father is finally ready to take her home. Elena's voice trembled slightly. Marcus, what I'm about to ask you is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I need you to let me say goodbye to her properly. And then I need you to walk away and never look back. Marcus turned to stare at her. Elena, you're her mother too. You don't have to disappear from her life. Yes, I do. Elena's green eyes were filled with tears. If I stay, she'll watch me die. She'll blame herself, think that loving people means losing them. I won't do that to her again. Elena took a shaky breath. I've arranged for her to believe I'm moving to Paris permanently for business. She thinks this is a happy reunion, not a permanent goodbye. Please don't take that from her. The front door opened and Emma looked up from the piano. When she saw Marcus, her face transformed with a smile so bright it could have powered the entire city. "Daddy!" she called out, her voice clear and musical. She ran toward him with none of the hesitation or fear he'd grown accustomed to. This time, when she threw herself into his arms, it was with complete trust and overwhelming love. Marcus lifted her up, feeling how much she'd grown, how strong and healthy she was. She smelled like lavender and childhood dreams, and when she pressed her face against his neck, he felt whole for the first time in 5 years. "I missed you so much, Daddy," Emma whispered in his ear. "Elena told me you were looking for me every day. She showed me all the pictures of you being sad. I wanted to come home sooner, but I had to get better first." Marcus looked over Emma's head at Eleanor, who was watching them with a mixture of joy and heartbreak. "Better?" he asked. Emma pulled back to look at him seriously. "I was very sick when Elena found me. Not body sick, but heart sick. She helped me remember how to be happy again. She taught me that loving people doesn't mean they'll leave you." The irony of Emma's words hit both adults like a physical blow, but Emma continued, oblivious to their pain. "Look what I can do now." Emma wiggled out of Marcus's arms and ran back to the piano. She played a complex piece from memory, her small hands moving with incredible precision. When she finished, she turned to him with pride shining in her eyes. "Elena taught me that. She said music is how we talk to our hearts when words aren't enough. Do you like it?" "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," Marcus said, and meant it. "I wrote it for you," Emma said, bouncing with excitement. "It's called Coming Home, because that's what it feels like when you're here. Elena helped me with the hard parts, but the feeling part is all mine." Elena stepped forward, her composure finally beginning to crack. "Emma, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important." Emma ran to Elena and took her hands. "You're going to Paris, aren't you? For your big business meeting?" "Yes, darling, and it's going to be for a very long time, maybe forever." Emma's face fell slightly, but then she brightened again. "But that's okay, because Daddy and I will visit you, won't we, Daddy? We can learn French together and come see you in your fancy Paris apartment." Marcus felt his throat close up, unable to speak around the lie they were asking Emma to believe. Elena knelt down to Emma's level, her hands trembling as she touched her daughter's face. "Emma, I need you to promise me something very important. Promise me you'll remember that every day we spent together was the happiest of my life. Promise me you'll keep playing piano, keep painting, keep being the brilliant, beautiful girl you are." "I promise," Emma said solemnly. "But Elena, why are you crying? Paris isn't that far away." "I'm crying because I'm so proud of you," Elena whispered. "And because I love you more than all the stars in the sky." Emma hugged Elena fiercely. "I love you too, Mama Elena. Thank you for taking care of me when I was broken. Thank you for helping me remember how to love Daddy again." Elena looked up at Marcus over Emma's head, her eyes conveying a message he understood perfectly. Take care of our daughter. Help her become everything she's meant to be. As they prepared to leave, Emma grabbed her little suitcase, packed with her clothes, her sheet music, her artwork, and a dozen photographs of her time with Elena. She seemed genuinely excited about going home, chattering non-stop about showing Marcus her paintings and teaching him the French songs Elena had taught her. "Daddy," Emma said as they drove away from the mansion, "Elena told me something special about you. She said you never stopped believing I would come home. Even when everyone else thought I was gone forever, you kept looking for me. Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "That's right, sweetheart. I never gave up hope." "That's how I knew you were my real daddy," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Real daddies never stop loving their little girls, no matter what happens." As they pulled into the driveway of Marcus's estate, Emma pressed her face against the window in wonder. "It's just like I remembered," she breathed, "just like in my dreams." That night, as Marcus tucked Emma into her old bedroom, now updated with a piano, an easel and shelves full of the books Elena had taught her to love, she looked up at him with those incredible blue eyes. "Daddy, I know Elena is never coming back from Paris," she said quietly. Marcus's heart stopped. "Emma—" "It's okay," Emma interrupted. "I understand about grown-up secrets. Elena is sick, isn't she? Really, really sick." Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, tears flowing freely. "Yes, sweetheart, she is." Emma nodded sadly. "I thought so. She's been getting skinnier, and sometimes she forgets to hide her medicine. But Daddy, she gave me the most important gift anyone could give." "Well, what's that, baby?" Emma smiled through her own tears. "She gave me back to you, and she taught me that love doesn't end just because people have to go away. It lives forever in here." She placed her small hand over her heart. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the Seattle Children's Center watching Emma teach piano to a group of homeless children. The center was funded by the Elena Montgomery Foundation, established with the $50 million she'd left for Emma. But Emma had asked Marcus to use it differently, not for her future, but to help children who were living the nightmare she'd survived. "Music helped me remember how to be happy," Emma had told him. "Maybe it can help them too." And as Marcus watched his daughter, brilliant, compassionate, and infinitely strong, share her gift with children who needed hope, he realized that Elena's greatest accomplishment wasn't the business empire she'd built or the wealth she'd accumulated. It was the remarkable young woman she'd raised and returned to him. Emma looked up and caught his eye, giving him the radiant smile that still took his breath away. In that smile, Marcus saw not just his daughter, but the legacy of a woman who had loved her enough to let her go. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to hold on and when to let go. Elena Montgomery had given them both the chance to discover that families aren't just made by blood or by law. They're made by the choice to love unconditionally, to sacrifice everything for someone else's happiness, and to believe that love truly can conquer all. As father and daughter walked home together under the Seattle sunset, Marcus whispered a prayer of gratitude for the guardian angel who had watched over them all, and for the second chance they'd all been given to choose love over loss, hope over despair, and family over everything else that didn't matter. The story had ended, but their life together was just beginning.